Hello and a very warm welcome to all. You're watching Hindustan Times and my name is Aisha Varma. Germany is bracing for a wave of Russian-backed disinformation ahead of critical state and local elections this September in an operation dubbed Matryoshka or Overload. More than 180 fake social media posts have been uncovered targeting political candidates with false accusations ranging from corruption to sexual misconduct. For more on this, we are joined by Sparrow, correspondent with our partners DW. Thomas, what exactly is this operation and how are these fake posts being created and distributed?
Experts have found three main goals of this operation, Matryoshka or Overload. That's what it's being called. The first one is to discredit, the second one is to divide, the third one is to overwhelm. When you're talking about discrediting, it's mostly discrediting politicians from the center of the political spectrum, from different parties, both at a local and a national level, with everything from corruption to misconduct to even sexual allegations and murder as well. Interestingly, experts found that the parties in the political extremes, so the far left and the far right, were basically spared from this operation. And that has to do with the fact that those two extremes are normally closer to Russia than the parties in the middle of the political spectrum. That's one point. The second element, to divide, specifically the posts that were found are saying that Germany is again basically divided as it was before the Berlin Wall fell, and that politicians are trying to divide Germany even more, so dividing and polarizing. And the third element, to overwhelm, has to do with the fact that most of these posts do not necessarily have organic reach that is noticeable, but the amount of posts that are being found and that are being spread is so high that the goal there is to overwhelm both fact checkers and journalists and also social media users. They are being spread mostly on platforms like X, Blue Sky and TikTok.
What evidence points to Russian state involvement, and how does this fit into Moscow's broader strategy ahead of Germany's 2026 elections?
So one element that experts have found, that have pointed to, is the fact that this operation bears the same hallmarks as previous operations that have been found in Europe ahead of important elections. So, for example, mimicking reputable media organizations. Most of the posts found here have the same or at least very similar look and feel to the videos that are posted by reputable media organizations, including DW. So this is called media spoofing, which is a traditional way of disinformation that we've seen in previous Russian-backed disinformation campaigns. The second element is that when you look at the actual content of these, and we've been able to look at several of these in the fact-checking team at DW, is that there are translations from Russian. So if you look at, for example, some of the parties with their acronyms, they've been translated not from the German acronym to English, but from the Russian acronym. And that is basically something that experts say points again to Russian involvement. Now, Russian organizations and the Russian government in particular have often, also in the past, denied any involvement with these kind of disinformation campaigns. But experts here in Germany, the government as well, think that it's part of a broader Russian campaign or Russian-backed campaign of hybrid warfare, and that part of that is trying to destabilize voters through these disinformation campaigns and also present an image of a divided, polarized Germany to other countries around the world.
How are German authorities responding, and what can voters do to spot and resist this kind of influence in operations?
So basically, both experts but also the government are very much aware that ahead of important elections, and the elections that are coming up in September are very important from a regional and from a national perspective, specifically because it could mean that for the very first time, the AfD, so the far-right party alternative for Germany, could end up leading one of Germany's regions. So that's why these elections are particularly relevant. And for the German government and for experts as well, this is clear that ahead of these elections, there is a potential for this kind of disinformation and for these kinds of disinformation campaigns. So they're raising awareness, especially for people in those affected regions, but also making sure that from a national perspective, from a government perspective, they can tackle disinformation and they can tackle any content that is also deemed illegal. What voters can do and what users can do more broadly is try and identify the patterns. So, for example, when we talk about media spoofing, so mimicking reputable media organizations, is always to double check in the media organizations themselves if the information has been posted. Also, for example, when it comes to these very harsh allegations against politicians, including corruption, sexual misconduct, and even murder. So double check is something that experts, disinformation experts, but also authorities have been telling people to check, especially ahead of important events. By the way, not only here in Germany, in other parts of Europe and around the world, especially when it comes to elections, there's an increase in disinformation and disinformation patterns. So that's why users are advised to be more aware, specifically when these very important events are happening.
All right, Thomas, thank you so much for joining us. With that, it's a wrap, but do stay tuned.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Have you ever wondered what happens when a banking dynasty meets tides of world history, intrigue, and a dash of myth?
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Have you ever wondered what happens when a banking dynasty meets tides of world history, intrigue, and a dash of myth?
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.